Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to deploy SignServer using the SignServer Community Helm Chart in Kubernetes. This Helm chart is available on GitHub under Keyfactor SignServer Community Helm. And the first thing that we want to do is to add the Keyfactor Helm chart repo. So I'm going to copy this link here. And run this, and I already have this added, and that's because in order to use SignServer you need an existing PKI, and for this purpose I have an egbCA deployed in my Minikube Kubernetes cluster. You can check out our other tutorial videos for how that's done and how to run an egbCA PKI. When deploying SignServer, you need to either provide it with a key store and trust store so that it can handle TLS termination, or you need to run it behind a load balancer that does it. I am going here to configure Kubernetes ingress to handle mutual TLS and have that in front of my SignServer instance. Here I am in the egbCA RA web connected as a superadmin using a TLS certificate. And this is the credentials that I will also use to get access to SignServer later. But first, I'm going to issue TLS certificate for my ingress. And for this, I have a TLS server certificate profile. I'm going to let the key pair generation be done by the CA. And the common name will be the DNS name of my Minikube cluster, which is my local Minikube. And this will also be added as a DNS name entry in the certificate. I'm going to set this as the username and provide an enrollment code, which is not going to be used as I will be downloading this as PEM files, which is an encrypted chain of the private key, the TLS certificate, and the issuing CA certificate, all of which I need now to configure my ingress. So I'm going to copy this from my downloads folder. And now I need to split this file into three separate files with each of those contents. So I will open this and start here by copying the private key. And create a separate file called ingress.key. Save this file. I'll go back to my chain file and next copy the ingress certificate content. I'll create a file called ingress.cert. Save that. And finally, copy the issuing CA content. And this is my egbCA management CA. That will be the only CA that I'm using here today. And I will create a file called managementca.cert. And save that. Now that I have my TLS private key certificate and CA certificate as separate files, I can add them to Kubernetes as secrets. I will start by creating a TLS secret by running kubectl create secret TLS, name it ingress TLS, and specify the key to be my ingress.key file and certificate to be ingress.cert. I will also create a secret containing my management CA certificate and use that as my trusted CA. And here I will run kubectl create secret generic, name it management CA secret, and use the argument from file and use my management ca.cert file. And as I will be using Ingress, I need to make sure that my Minikube has the Ingress add-on enabled. So I will run Minikube add-ons enable Ingress. So now I should be able to configure an Ingress. And as I will be deploying it together with my SignServer, I'm going to go to the Git repo and use a configuration snippet from here, as it contains examples for various deployment scenarios. And here we have enabling Ingress in front of SignServer. I'm just going to copy this section here, create a Helm Chart configuration file, call it SignServer.yaml, add the content, and this here will enable a proxy AGP service to the SignServer container, and that's how Ingress will be connecting to SignServer. And it's using the Nginx class as the Ingress, and it's referencing here the management CA secret that I created, so I don't need to change this value here. My hostname is not the default here, but rather my local Minikube. And here for this path / SignServer, it's going to use the Ingress TLS secret that I just created. So that should be it. And I'm now ready to deploy SignServer. So I'll do so using Helm install, call my deployment SignServer, and my Helm chart is keyfactor / SignServer Community Helm, which is from the repo that was previously added. And instead of using the defaults, I will use my values from the SignServer.yaml file that I just created now. And I'm running that. And to see when SignServer is done deploying, I can run kubectl get pods -w to watch the progress. And as you can see here, I already have an EGBCA and MariaDB database running. And my SignServer is done, so I can go to my browser here, go to my local Minikube / SignServer. And here I get a TLS warning, and that's because I haven't added this management CA certificate as a trusted CA. So I'll quickly do so, going to my Firefox settings, searching for certificates, view certificates, and authorities, which is my trusted authorities. And I can search here for EGBCA, which contains this EGBCA container quick start CA that was deployed with my EGBCA Helm deployment. So now I'm trusting this to identify websites. And if I now refresh this site here, I no longer have a TLS warning, and I've accessed SignServer. And if I now try to go to the administration web link, I also can access this here because I have a super admin certificate installed in my Firefox, and that was used to authenticate, as we can see here. Now, as I haven't configured SignServer to connect to a database, any changes that I would make in here would not persist after a restart. So what I'm going to do is to set up SignServer to also connect to the MariaDB database that I already have running. And first I need to create the database that SignServer will be using. And to do so, I have to connect to the database. And I will do that by running kubectl exec -it and then the name of my MariaDB server. And here I will run the command inside the container MariaDB, connect as the root user, and providing my database root password. And I'm now logged into the database, and I can create my SignServer database by just running create database SignServer DB. And I also have to create a user that the SignServer container can use to connect to this database. So I will run grant all privileges on SignServer DB and all tables in it to I'll name the user SignServer, and I will let it connect from any host, and it will identify using a password that I will set to foo123. Oh, forgot identified by. There we go. So I can now log out from the database and update my SignServer deployment config to set it to use a database. So I will open this config file, and again I will use an example from the Git repository where we have a deploy SignServer with a database, or connecting SignServer to an external database, which it is from the perspective of SignServer. So I'm going to copy this section here and add this to the top of my config file. So what this does here is that it disables the ephemeral in-memory database that I was deploying with previously, and instead connecting to my MariaDB server and using the MariaDB DB database name, which is what I created. The database user is SignServer and the password is foo123, which is also what I created. So then I can apply these configurations by running Helm upgrade my SignServer deployment using the same Helm chart. And my configuration file. And then just need to wait for my new deployment to be ready. Okay, so it finished deploying with the new settings and it's terminating the previous deployment. So if I now go back here, I'm still able to access the SignServer administration web interface, but I can now make persistent changes. And the first thing that I want to do when I'm connecting to SignServer is to add my TLS certificate as an explicit administrator. And that's done here in the administration tab, adding, and you can use the load current to load the information about the certificate that I've used to connect now. I can add myself to the different administrator roles, which is for worker administration, auditor to be able to view the audit log, and archive auditor to view the archive if that's being used. I can now add this, and then I want to change this to switch to only listed, which means that only this certificate will be able to access this administration web interface and not anyone with a TLS certificate issued by the management CA, which is the default. There we go, and I'm still able to get access here, and I'm now ready to start creating workers. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to create a worker from one of the built-in templates, the key store crypto. And if I just apply this default, it will use a key store that contains a number of signing keys and certificates that comes bundled with SignServer. And the only change I'm going to do here is to uncomment the key store password line so that I don't need to add this manually later on if this deployment restarts. And if I now apply this, I have a crypto worker, so that's an interface to somewhere where signing keys are stored. And these are just for demo purposes, but I will use this now to also create a signer. A plain signer, which just takes any input and signs it, and just returns a plain signature as a response. And again here, if I just apply this with the default settings, it's going to use a key in this demo key store, and I can use this directly to start signing. So I will go to the SignServer client web by going here to /SignServer and client web. And here I can use a direct input to just provide any text input that will be signed. And my worker was called plain signer. And just some test data here. And if I now submit this, SignServer signs it and returns this as this process file, which just contains the signature on this data. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and stay tuned for more information on how to use SignServer in Kubernetes.